Welcome to Pastor's Podcast, Season 8.
Season 8.
Season 8, there's something to that, I guess. It's, listen, we're from a prophetic culture.
I only count the seasons I've been on.
So season,
Have
yeah.
you not
I think
been
it's
on
season
every
3,
season?
4.
Yeah, no.
I'm in season 2. Wait, what are we talking about?
Two.
You
Season
guys,
8.
I've never been on one.
You've never been on a Pastor's Podcast?
No.
Well, welcome. Welcome.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
This is
have
a-
they even counted
No,
until
they
now?
haven't.
No,
at all.
all I've been is
Listen.
the origin story until
it's just
today.
kinda
Listen,
build
I'm
up.
not going to make fun of the prophetic right now because I actually love the prophetic a lot. But we have funny stories because I'm going to tell a quick story, CJ. Let's tell the
Oh
story.
my gosh, no.
We're going to tell a story because
You're going to expose me.
I
I'm
know.
going to expose you right
you know
back.
when you've been married almost 30 years, she automatically knows what I'm
I
talking about.
completely know.
Absolutely.
So I would say season 8, and listen. I know that people that we're actually a deeply prophetic church.
Yes.
deeply value the prophetic.
I
but we
cannot
also
believe you are exposing
we
me
also
this early.
don't we also don't take ourselves too serious,
Right.
especially
Right.
with the prophetic. So season 8 would be new beginnings, right? So there's a new
Sorry, that
There's a new, it's a new beginning word.
there's new seasons on us. We're in a new beginning.
Yeah.
Season 8.
Yes.
Yeah.
I
Right?
believe it.
So especially when we were learning the prophetic. So when we're in our 20s, we're just married, and we are new to the prophetic. We're learning the prophetic. And you're starting to look at everything like it's prophetic. Everything was
Everything
prophetic.
prophetic.
Everything was prophetic.
Yeah, man.
Which I actually loved our zeal and being naive. I actually
Absolutely.
love the journey of that,
Absolutely.
right?
I want back in.
So CJ has a real prophetic call on her. Like it's real. So we used to have these go-gurts. Do you know what go-gurts
so-
are? They're like
this
the
is so
cylinder.
embarrassing.
They're like the cylinder.
Oh, this is getting good. I can't wait for this.
They're
And
like
I'm looking
the,
right
they're,
at you.
They're like the
So
kid
bad.
yogurts, and they're in a cylinder, and you kind of tear the top off, and then you just suck it out. You know, you put it in your
Yeah.
mouth, and just squeeze it out.
They
right?
were brand new,
Oh, they're so good,
and they
too.
were really good, all right?
They're like candy, and we're in our 20s, right? So we didn't eat anything. We were just eating everything.
I don't even know why we bought Go-Gurts. We didn't have kids.
Oh, this was when we were
my
going
God.
to. We'd be going to Carl's.
But
Ju-
we-
like,
Too
it
poor
was
for
bad.
real food.
Yeah.
We ate Go-Gurts.
Too young to know.
So CJ comes to me one day.
gosh.
It goes, Banning,
This is so mean.
I think there's an attack on the prophetic in my life. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, I think there's an attack on my voice and my prophetic calling. And she said, what do you mean? She said, I have these cuts on the side of my mouth. She's dead serious. She
dead
goes,
serious.
She goes,
Stop. Don't
She
say
said, I have these cuts on the side of my mouth, and I think there's an attack against my prophetic voice. And I was like, wow, okay, oh no, we need to pray against that. And then like an hour later, she's at the refrigerator and gets out a Go-Gurt, and she's eating this Go-Gurt while it's cutting the side of her mouth. And she has a revelation.
You didn't put that together.
She has a revelation like, ooh, maybe it's not prophetic. Maybe it's just I'm eating a lot of Go-Gurts.
There are so many things I love about this story. I don't even know how to list them.
It's so embarrassing.
No, it's so amazing.
So just the
classic.
other day, I make this sandwich. It's sourdough slices, and then I toast them. You know, so I like them toasted for whatever reason. But I was home for a few days, and I kept eating this sandwich. You know, it's just salami and pepperoncinis and avocado. And I'm eating these, and so it was just tearing up the roof of my mouth.
Yeah.
Oh, here you
So
go.
I went to CJ. I'm like, CJ, there's an attack on my mouth. There's an attack on my prophetic voice. The top of my mouth
Yeah,
is
the
tore up
enemy-
from that.
Sweetness
She's
of
like,
it.
it's not funny. That's not funny. It's been like 25 years.
I was
It's
just
not
going to say,
funny.
this is an ongoing story.
I was
still
like so
unfolding.
genuine, like the enemy is trying to quiet me.
It's amazing. And it was just your Go-Gurt addiction.
It was just my Go-Gurt addiction.
The clay that God has to use. Good. Not very sharp, are we?
Listen,
Not very sharp.
I'm believing that story is not over. I'm just saying there's gonna come a moment where God speaks through. I'm just telling you.
Speaks through
it's
a Go-Gurt.
just-
No.
it's
You know
gonna
what the
happen.
problem is? I would love to have more. We don't eat them anymore.
Yeah.
They're bad for you. But I wish I had Go-Gurts in my. I still would eat Go-Gurts. I love Go-Gurts.
They're good.
All right,
They're a little
well-
bit like candy.
So we have obviously on the podcast my wife CJ. Great to have you on the podcast.
The great
First time
prophetic
ever.
voice
That's
that
really-
can't be stopped by Go-Gurts.
The enemy will not stop you.
This
And
is
then
funny.
also introduce your guys self, Phil, who's one of the original,
One of the OGs.
founders, not just the
OG.
OGs. You're in the you're
Yes.
a founding member of the
Founding
Pastors
member.
Podcast. And so introduce yourself real quick. What you
Yeah,
doing?
Phil Manginelli, lead pastor of the Square, just in the Atlanta area. And I will say, which is probably the new Go-Gurt. I love Uncrustables.
Oh, I can't get enough of them.
I could eat them.
I don't
for
eat them, but I love
almost
them.
gone off the
every
rails.
meal.
They are delightful.
That's probably more important to know about me than almost anything else.
You're like, I've got a tummy ache. Man, the enemy is coming.
The enemy's coming.
The enemy's coming again. Hope you've just had too many Uncrustables.
Hey, the enemy can come at you anyway.
All
All
right,
right.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, you people.
true.
Great to have you, an
Thank you.
originally
Oh my
founding
gosh.
member, and also with us. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Keith Jenkins, East Hill in Gresham, Oregon, right outside Portland.
Right outside Portland. Does that make you a Trailblazers fan?
You don't want to have this conversation.
Well, it
which
just-
you already knew the answer, but this is for the
I know,
pastors.
it sounds
I'm a
like-
Lakers fan.
I know, it sounds
You're a
like-
sorry Sacramento fan.
It sounds like
and it's
it is
unfortunate.
It sounds like if you were actually loyal and wanted to reach your city for Christ,
Oh, okay.
you'd actually support local teams.
Hey,
Not
okay.
the what they got a carpetbagger. There's like a term for you whenever you're up there.
Wow.
I think he's still sore over the playoff loss years ago.
Oh, yeah.
He's
You
still
think?
loyal.
It
You
was
think?
rigged.
Vladi
It was
Divac.
rigged. It was rigged.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's great to have you with us. One of the things we just want to do is honestly just sit down and have a conversation, not about Go-Gurts, not about Uncrustables, not about the Lakers.
I got some wisdom for you all.
that's right.
Just
But
wait.
about this, how I'm going to make it turn into our topic is going to be really. I don't know how I'm going to turn into
Can
our
you
topic.
turn
waiting for
any
the pivot.
story into a point? You
I know.
got
Well,
this.
here's a point, but talking about Uncrustables, I really believe that the Lord wants to, but because we're literally talking about pastors falling today.
It's just they could not be
Further,
a worse conversation to
Oh,
put this in.
Randy.
further. I'd say we're going to edit this, but we're not. It's
No,
going to
no,
be
it's
completely
just-
unedited.
Oh, God.
What are the
But the conversation needs it though. Listen,
It
if we're going to
does.
talk about
Totally.
The
the
heaviness,
crisis
yes.
that
Totally.
pastors are facing, you
It
got to
does
have a
need some
little,
levity.
One of the things I
Uncrustable
said was
humor.
when I got a hold of you guys and said, hey, would you sit down and just have a conversation on a podcast? And I said, what I really want to talk about is the current pastoral crisis we seem to be in. Now, I want to preface this with, I don't think that one pastor falling is indicative of every pastor.
Right.
I think for every pastor that's fallen, I'm making this up, there's 1,000 pastors that aren't.
Yeah.
So we obviously see the big ones. It's especially on the news a
Yeah.
lot today. You find out a lot quicker. Times that I wouldn't have even known that there was a pastor in Kentucky somewhere that,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have even known about it before, but because of the internet, I know about it now.
Yeah.
So I don't want to paint a picture. When I say pastoral crisis, I don't want to paint a picture of this is a disease all across, because I actually think there's way more faithful pastors, way more pure pastors, way more pastors that aren't dealing with insecurity and all that type of stuff. But I will say this, we live in a unique time right now.
Yeah.
I think with access to just unhealthy things, the comparison thing, the insecurity thing, the amount of stress and coping mechanisms. So there's probably
Yeah, it's very
naturally
real.
some things that are happening that are different than other generations. We're not the only generation, too, where pastors have fallen. But it does seem to be that you just keep looking and, man, pastors are not making it. I mean, heroes of the faith, generals in the faith that didn't finish well.
Yeah.
Or people that are more our age, our generation, that seem to not have dealt with whatever they need to deal with, and so it gets to that point. I almost didn't have CJ on the podcast because CJ's like, "You really want me on this podcast to talk about like what's the problem with pastors as when I'm married to you?" She's like, "Well, here's my take on it as
Phil will be nice. He'll be full of grace and mercy.
Yep.
And here's the crazy
I will
thing.
be too.
I don't think it's just men that fall, but I mean,
Ish.
I tell you, enough of you two. So here's the kind of the question I want to say. Well, I don't think it's necessarily this massive disease that's affected everybody. And I would say this, it's not just the guys that have fallen, but we all are also walking with pastors that feel unhealthy in many ways. Maybe it hasn't led to a sin that has disqualified them from ministry at that time, or broken up their marriage, but you're just with God. You're around people that are like, dude, there's some unhealthy things that I think you need to deal with, and you're not dealing with. What's the problem? Are we supposed to be having this much pressure on us? Is comparison killing us? Are we not dealing with the unhealthy thing? Like when we look at it, and with pastors you're walking with, and a lot of these guys, a lot of the guys that have fallen, we know personally, but then a lot we just know from a distance. As we look at it, one, do you think we're making too big of a deal out of it by even having a podcast about it? Two, is there something that we're not talking about and dealing with within church culture in Western American concept that we need to be dealing with?
Yeah, because I think the the answer to that question is so complex.
Yeah, absolutely.
And multi-leveled. And it's really sensitive to me right now. I just had a friend, real time, blew his life apart. I didn't know. I was close enough to help. I was close enough proximity. Never knew. And something has happened to us. And I think I felt it early in my ministry. We're in the third decade of our ministry. So I felt it earlier where I felt like I had to project strength. I had to have answers. I had to know everything, be everything. And some of that was family of origin trauma, stuff like that I drove into the church.
Absolutely.
I just think that there are different causation. There are different factors. And one of them is obviously unresolved trauma in our lives. And for me, that's been the thing I had to go after because it showed up in my marriage, showed up in my ministry. What's that old saying? Everywhere you go, there you are. So it doesn't matter where you go, change church, change jobs, you're the common denominator. And so I had to get real serious about it. But for me, it was the trauma of family. And couple
was
that
it the same
with,
situation with the guy you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that gets turned up, right, with the pressures of ministry.
Absolutely.
Yes,
That's what, it becomes a sort of
in ministry, what makes us not deal with that trauma? Okay, maybe where we raise, it could be how we're raised, something that's happened in childhood, whatever else it is, you know. What do you think makes us not actually, as pastors, stop and go, I need to deal with this stuff? Or are we not aware of it? Are we?
right.
I feel it not even as a man, but like Sundays at church, you walk around and the people talk to you like you know everything.
Yep.
And I mean, you have to make a conscious choice of like, I am just me. I'm doing the best I can. I'm walking with Jesus. But there is that moment of like, can I be weak? What if I have to take a moment to really deal with
that
some
part.
crap? Can I take that moment?
Right.
Like, is there space for me to be weak?
Right.
When you do feel this pressure. And I mean, I'm in a different ballgame. I'm not in the position that you guys are where the questions people bring to me and the expectation they have on me to know everything doesn't feel like there's room to deal with your stuff sometimes.
Well, let's just be honest. The church is not a safe place for us as pastors to fail, to have issues and struggles. And by the way, we taught the church this because there was a generation. I'm 58 now. I came at the back end of the thing, right? But there was a generation that was taught in Bible college. Do not tell people your problems.
You can't be friends with anyone.
Can't be friends with anybody, remember?
On your
Nobody
staff,
can be friends
they would
in your
say
church.
that.
Yes, absolutely.
On your staff, you can't be friends with your
See,
staff.
so now you're isolated. You have this pressure. We all are flawed, so we all have proclivities.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all have tendencies. But I have no one to go to. And the churches, I can't tell anybody. So I got to keep projecting this image that I got it all together and that I can answer your questions and solve your problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I do. I mean, there are so many layers.
Yes.
But I think a huge part of it is it's the whole package where church becomes a consumable good. Faith is a consumable good. And therefore, at the end of that, so is your pastor. It's like the exchange that gets created is this pressure of I offer something to be consumed. And what it does, I think, I can feel it, I can see it in other people's lives. There's a healthy, natural relationship, what it means to be a pastor to a people. But then once we make pastors this like consumable good, what we're telling is the minute you're not something I want to consume anymore, I'm going to go somewhere else. And I think there's this thing that happens in pastors, and the hard part is probably by the time you've had the maturity to go, I don't want to care, I don't want to let that form me. It's already formed me a lot.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that pressure.
And you don't even know it.
And you don't even know it. And I think by the time you're there, either you've left ministry or you're in really deep sin or you're just heartbroken. I think you kind of get three places. And I think part of the challenge is as a pastor, it's like if we don't learn how to get weak quick, part of the problem is that all of those patterns, they get worse and worse and worse. So if I don't actually know how to confess small sins, or I don't know how to get certain pain right, by the time they're consequential, you're just like, what do I do? You just don't know how to do anything. I think pastors get to this point where they haven't developed the skills to get their heart right or to get to health, and the next thing you know, they find themselves in situations that will disqualify them and should disqualify them, but they keep them secret, and then those secrets just eventually will implode on them.
But how do you? So we have a job to lead a community of people.
Yeah.
And we are to come with faith. We are to come with vision. We're to teach the Word of God. And so I found even in COVID, which SeaJay can tell you, was a very rough time for me.
Yeah.
And it was a rough time for everybody.
Right.
For us in particular, the Lord was doing something in me. As I'm sure it had its own natural roughness. But the Lord was also putting his finger on some stuff with me, saying, hey, we're going to deal with some of this stuff because where I'm taking you, I got to deal with this. I was really having to find some vision. But I can't lead from that is the problem.
Yeah.
Like my church is hurting. My church needs vision.
Yeah.
My church needs hope. And I wasn't faking it.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
But I can't get up there and lead from the place you're describing.
Right?
Yes.
So how do we do that?
Yeah.
Like I'm like,
Yes.
I've got to bring hope and vision to a people right now.
Right.
That are trying to, like, in the midst of this crisis, that are struggling, trying to figure things out. I've got to bring that to them. Well, I'm also kind of, I'm not faking it. There's no faking it. It's
No,
not
I'm
a
with
fake
you.
thing.
No, I hear
But
you.
so how do you walk that out, though?
Because,
Do you know what I'm saying?
for instance, I was in the Marine Corps for 10 years. We had a helicopter. We were bringing nuclear weapons down from the naval magazine in Guam down to the ships. So you had to have an air element and a ground element to take it down, to keep it secure. You notice certain sounds repeatedly. Like, I know what a helicopter sounds like. I know what the F-15 sounds like. So you hear this helicopter, the first one in the stick taking off, and it doesn't sound right. And I'm in the second stick. And it goes up, and it hits a certain point, and it collapses and falls down. And all of those guys die on impact and burn and that type of thing. But guess what? We're getting in a helicopter, and we still got to go because the nuclear weapons are on the road.
Yeah, that's a great word.
So we got to lock that away, compartmentalize that, and keep going and accomplishing the mission.
Yes. Yeah.
That didn't work its way. That unresolved trauma did not work its way out of my life. It had been compartmentalized, and I just put it away until my wife and I were in Hawaii, and somebody gave us a helicopter tour of the island. I'm like, great. But I get out there, and I smell JP4. Wow. And immediately... I don't know what's happening. I'm having a panic attack. My wife's like, what's wrong with you? We get on the helicopter. I take the ride. It wasn't until I got into therapy when I got home that I realized that trauma goes all the way back.
Yes.
And so when you say that, of course, we're compartmentalizing so that we can. Sunday's always coming, Bandy. I can't have a guest speaker every Sunday.
No.
And so my grandmother
can't
dies.
just hand
Whatever
off leadership.
happens.
Yes.
Right.
We have to. So then one of the things that leads us, I think, to unhealth is compartmentalization. Like, we need to be holistic, but at the same time, how do I function as a pastor without putting things in compartments?
How do we reclaim healthy visions of them? Because it is not insincere to walk in front of my church and preach faith when I'm going home at night and going, God,
Absolutely.
where are you?
Say that.
It is that is not a disingenuous.
Absolutely.
We sometimes think that those are fake expressions. I hope whoever listening to this, whether you're a pastor or you have a pastor,
Real talk.
I hope your pastor is preaching faith on Sundays and crying out for it on Sunday evenings.
Yes.
Because that is a real life with Jesus.
But how do it is? But
It is.
how do we not get like?
Well, I think this
keep
is
going,
the place.
that's a tough one.
It is a tough one. But I think the
have
expression
to
is
gear
here
up for that, and yet somehow,
because I think this is where one, pastors need other pastors.
Oh,
Yes,
100%.
absolutely.
Part of the road back to whatever is normal
Yes.
is only going to be found, like I've called both
Us.
of you,
Absolutely.
Yes.
weeping
I was just
over
thinking
things,
about this.
struggling over things.
Yes.
Yes.
Like what Banning, you and I have talked about this specifically a lot, the desire in me to be significant and how I measure that and how I don't. And I can even know all the right answers and my soul is crying out for all of the wrong answers.
Yeah.
And I'll feel less than, and my less than wants to take me towards numbing. And if I would ever let that numbing become like to have
How did you know that was my life? Go
to have
ahead, tell me.
friends that I can go,
Yeah.
I feel really insignificant right now.
Yeah,
And I'm
absolutely.
looking at other people
Right.
that my arrogance even thinks I'm better than, And they're more significant than me, and then I feel not only insignificant, I feel like I'm the, just all of the
That's
crappy
hilarious.
emotions.
That's what for me, it's easier. It's funny being married to Banning because he's not naturally an open up person. And, like pull groups around. He's grown in it. He's got you guys. I see his
Which
group
you hate
of men.
now. You just keep going. I'm joking. She hates. I'm like finding my emotions. She's like, "Oh my gosh, can you go back to when you didn't have emotions?
I
like
will
your emotions
say,
are." She's totally like, "Okay, enough with the emotions."
This is like filet CJ. I have so many things I could expose, and I am not exposing them
Thank you. I
because I
appreciate
love
that.
you.
Your kindness
But,
is wonderful.
It is different to have a very strong non-emotional man for most of your marriage, and now all of a sudden he's like, "That hurt my feelings." I'm all, "What the heck?"
The way she just said
Suck
it.
it
Right.
up, man.
But you were
Buttercup.
saying, I cut you off on your point.
So when we started this church, and I have always been a pretty vulnerable, honest person with who I am, where I'm at.
Absolutely.
Like if I'm on a stage and I feel sad, the tears are flowing out of my eyes. But all of a sudden, when we started this church, it was like
That's what Raya thought.
the responsibility of that. Like I am bringing hope.
Yes.
I'm preaching Jesus. It's not about me.
Right.
But I knew before we ever did it, I needed a group of people that knew where I really was.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I would be disingenuous to be on the stage if there wasn't people knowing, actually, she's not okay right now, but she's going
we
to
got
preach
her.
what the
Yeah.
truth is right now.
Yeah.
Right.
She's going to represent Jesus right now,
Right.
but I have people that know I am struggling.
Yeah.
And it kept
Yeah.
me from bottling it up. It kept me from shutting down, but it
Right.
also kept me from being a mess on the stage.
Yeah.
And possibly, I feel like sometimes when you allow that to be your leader, that's when the churches go the wrong direction also.
But see,
you know?
I think that's it. But Bobby Clinton did some work on why leaders don't finish well, and one of the factors was they don't have a cohort or community that they actually are seen and known for who they are in. And all of the guys through the years, think about it. All of the guys that ended up blowing their lives apart, do the autopsy on that because I have. They literally, part of them, they were in isolation.
Oh, it's independence. Absolutely.
They were in
Yes.
isolation. They had no one around. And by the way, people available, but you're only as accountable as you want to be.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right? So for me, the mechanism, because let's just be real. Last year was hard for me.
Yeah.
And I reached out to Bannon on multiple times and like, this is crazy. Church people are crazy. I don't know if I want to keep doing this.
Yep.
But I was going to church on Sunday. Praise the Lord.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. They were both true.
Absolutely.
And I had to hold them in tension. And
Absolutely.
it was last night what he ministered at the conference. If you haven't heard that message, the first message, it made sense of 2024.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was Refiner's Fire. The only way that I made it through that is friends, real brothers.
And I do think, and I don't know if you guys feel this more as men, but I think sometimes there's a disqualification of who those people can be.
Yeah.
Like they have to be fellow pastors. They have to be someone that gets it. They have to be someone that like meets this criteria of safety. And I will say this for women, it's a little bit different in that I know if I can trust you. And I also trust the Lord to bring the right people. And it's been interesting who the people God has brought that are that for me.
Yeah.
And they are not necessarily who I would say. And when I watch men, a lot of times I'm like, you guys carry a pressure that like, oh man, if I say something wrong and it doesn't get carried right, and it gets, and I'm like that's a pressure I do think is different with women. Yes, we worry about that, but at the same time, I'm like, I think us women have an intuition of like.
I agree.
I do.
And I think part of it,
I do too.
I think even having CJ, both of you guys on this podcast, because I do think part of the answer too is it has to be a place you're wrestling with your spouse on.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think when that place of tension or division gets in your marriage as a pastor, it's so hard. Like where there is intimacy in your marriage, you're going to be able to wrestle through nearly everything. But and I've learned that, like Emily, even that picture of like Eve is Adam's military aide. Like when Emily is my partner in the fight, because I think as men specifically, I can say I feel this. I hate my weaknesses.
Yeah.
And I feel when they get presented just to me, I feel this deep desire for them to not be true.
Yeah.
And my inadequacy and that sense of it is really
Or
hard.
they should have been handled.
Or they
20
should have been
years
handled
ago.
earlier.
That part.
Like, because this weakness
Yes.
was there when I was 16,
And
now
it's
I'm
still here.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
like, so even when like I hate my weakness, I hate that this weakness is still here.
It's still here.
It's not here at the same level necessarily,
Right.
but you're
Right,
like,
right.
I'm a grown man. I
Yeah.
should have. Oh yeah.
So
It's funny because as a woman, when we will talk, I look at him like, why do you feel ashamed of that? You know,
Yeah.
because as a
Wow.
woman, I'm like,
I
That's
do. I
interesting.
actually feel deeply ashamed of it. And even
Yeah.
in learning how to, like, for me, part of this season has been learning how to try to begin to invite my church into the challenges I face in my life.
Yeah.
And I think some of the challenges for pastors, I don't want to make church about me. I honor my role as
Yeah.
the lead pastor,
Right.
but my church is not about me. The tension of those two things is hard.
Oh, yeah.
There's healthy vulnerability. There's unhealthy
Unhealthy,
vulnerability.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, my pastor, literally, I was trained, like, do not bleed on the sheep.
Right.
That's what I was told. Don't bleed on the sheep. But I've, since the last 3 years, I think maybe the last 36 months or maybe 4 years, I have gone to the pulpit, especially with COVID, all that was going on. I've gone to the pulpit and said, yep, I'm not good today. But we're going to be obedient. We're going to have a good time. And I've tried, because what I wanted the church to become is a place of vulnerability
Yeah.
where people could be real.
Yes.
But if I'm not going to be real from the stage, and like you said, there's appropriate levels, but at the same
Absolutely.
time, they need to see their leader struggles and is still faithful, still follows God, still believes God, still has faith, and yet we can struggle. Oh, that makes sense. This is part of the journey.
Yeah.
By the way, beloved, that is the human experience.
I probably the thing why I ask like why do you feel shame? Because for me, I feel like let's not pretend, and this is something I try to make sure I represent to everybody in our church. Like, let's not pretend we're not all on a journey.
Right.
We don't
Right.
all have something we're working
Right.
through, and that my biggest thing is just don't stop working through it. Like, as long as you don't sit down, lay in the pit, and say, "This is
Right.
where I'm moving
Right.
into," but you're still getting up, going, dang it, still there, but here I go.
Well, Benny, think last night, we came off the stage last night, right? And you were being bombarded. Different pastors come up and say, man, thank you for doing that. You were just so open and transparent. I'm like, that should be normative for us.
Yeah.
That shouldn't have been a big surprise that you got up there. And you were uncomfortable with them even telling you that.
Let me ask this real quick, because I think that talking to pastors, whether you've been in ministry for 40 years or whether you're just starting, whether you're a volunteer or whatever else it is, I think that sometimes we have to be able to say, hey, listen, you got to deal with the stuff that's going on internally because, and I want to maybe process this with you guys. Well, we try not to act like pastoring is harder than other things, because we're not trying to, we legitimately are like, listen, people go through tough stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to be a victim.
You don't catastrophize it. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
like, hey, the guy who's working the job, trying to
Right,
raise his
right,
family.
right.
But the reality is
It's different.
we do have a very unique situation.
is.
And the unique situation is this. We're trying to run a business. So we literally are balancing budgets, trying to figure out how to pay people, are having to face maybe laying off people
That's right.
that are like we care deeply about, having to, you've got, these are volunteers that are coming, so you're trying to run a business. And then you're having to spiritually bring really enriching food all the time to people.
Yes.
And so you're having to prep for that. You're having to bring things for that. And then you're having to come with real wisdom in people's situation. And then, so you've got all that going on. Then you've got people that are looking at you with expectations.
Yeah.
They are expecting something from you. They are looking to you for something in ways they're not looking to other people for.
Right.
And then you've got where you're actually walking through situations where there's real, you're getting phone calls about parents who are telling you that their kid has cancer, and you're literally sitting in hospital rooms where a baby is dying.
That's right.
And you're sitting
right.
in sessions where just marriages are completely imploding,
Yeah.
and people are making the dumbest decisions, and then people are leaving the church because they don't like you and because they're vocal. I'm just saying, all of that is the job.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes some pastors are big enough and they can kind of farm out a bunch of stuff and be a little bit insulated from a lot of that. But for the most part, every pastor's like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to handle a budget, and I'm trying to figure out what to do about, insurance, and I'm trying to figure out how do I not fire you, and I'm trying to, my point is this.
And last on the list is my own stuff.
Yeah, and then you got marriage, and you're trying to raise kids in the midst of all that. I mean, when we were 2 years into the church plant, and my daughter, who I love, and is amazing and doing great. This is years ago, but I mean, kind of just blew up things in our world. So I literally am getting on a plane and having to go in the bathroom and just cry.
Yeah.
I'm just so overwhelmed by what's going on with my daughter. All of this going on. So I'm having to balance a budget. I'm trying to figure out how to raise this daughter. I'm trying to figure out how to get, people are upset because they got unmet expectations at our church. And I'm trying to make sure I'm bringing you a meaningful word from Scripture every week. And then we're trying to reach the community and have some vision for this and make sure that we spend money
and have
there.
the entire plan for the year ahead.
Wow, bro.
But I mean,
We do all that?
I
know.
that's the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now that pressure,
It's real.
Yeah.
It's real.
and this is where we're challenging it, and I'm like, well, what's the problem? I don't know. Like unresolved issues that you didn't deal with.
That's one.
Yeah.
Why would you run off with some woman and blow your life up? And then we do have shame. We do all this type of stuff. Maybe talk about that a little bit. I don't even know how we talk about that, but I think that we don't sometimes stop and go, listen, we're not trying to act like we're heroes.
Yeah.
We're not trying to act like we're better than other professions or whatever else. But there is a real unique dynamic to what we do
Yes.
that if you do not approach it soberly,
Without even adding in spiritual warfare.
I was just going to say,
Yes.
there is an adversary in
That knows if he can strike the shepherd, he can discourage
scatter
the
the
sheep.
sheep.
Absolutely.
So I think that maybe sometimes we just need to go, hey guys, that's real.
It's real.
So therefore, we need to be even more intentional.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think owning that it's real, I want this. I feel called to this.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want another life.
Yeah.
I want to really pastor.
Right.
And so going, okay, so I'm going to be sober. I'm going to own what it is.
Yeah.
But then realize if I don't build in the kind of life with Jesus, if I don't prioritize, and part of what I think a lot of pastors struggle with is you don't have an authority. You just think about how much we have to choose to put our lives under someone, to let somebody be around us. Like we need fathers and mothers who go, hey, Phil, that's not like Jesus.
Yep.
You can't do
Who's
that.
pastoring the pastor?
Just on the little
Yes.
things.
Yes.
Like, I mean, like, hey, I just saw the way you interact with that person, or I saw the way
Yes.
you talk to your wife, or
Yes.
I saw,
Yes.
how's your prayer life? I'm
calls
not
you out.
satisfied.
That's right.
Why are you
Like,
saying yes that
Yo,
loud when he says,
Amen.
well, I saw you
Amen.
talk-
I think-
you said how you talk to your wife. She's
No.
like, yes.
I was agreeing for me.
All right,
I think
Gosh.
this is the thing. As a pastor, you are going to have to choose to bring in the parts of your life
Yeah.
that you need to stay healthy. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
And that's where I honor pastors. Like, I'm a senior pastor.
Yeah.
I technically have authorities over me in certain ways, whether it's an elder board or a denominational structure. We all know that those are not enough.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to get spiritual mothers and fathers and go, you have permission to
Yes.
correct me. You
Yes.
have permission to call my wife. And if you have
Hey,
permission...
can we have this conversation? They can't live across the country.
Well,
No, they
that's
have
what
to
I was
be-
getting ready
they
to
have
say.
to
Yeah,
be
let's
real
have that
engaged.
conversation.
It's
Because I'm like, who's your
so-
spiritual father? Oh, they live in, I'm like,
Yeah, no.
That doesn't count.
No.
they're not seeing how you live. They're seeing whatever you want them to see.
I knew that I needed, so I wanted to come against that idea that I couldn't have intimate, real relationships with people in my church. And so I chose out 3 men. Over the last 4 years, it's been slow, but we're there now. And the questions get asked. They see me in church. They say, hey, what happened in service the other day? I saw this thing, or you went off. Because the other thing with that is I can have people translocal, but you don't have proximity.
Yeah.
You don't see me.
Yeah.
We don't have, and by the way, I don't have an opportunity to go and be with you to be refreshed.
Yeah.
On a Friday night or Saturday or Sunday after church to have somebody. So we have to have people in the soil, in the fabric of our lives.
Yeah.
And we've got to mine those relationships out because there is a trust factor involved with entrusting yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a friend of mine
Absolutely.
that's a high profile pastor that goes to a neighboring city to go to counseling because he doesn't want to be seen in a counseling office for this particular issue because somebody could draw a conclusion. And so he
gosh.
goes to a whole nother city.
Yeah.
So much pressure.
And I think
Totally.
we have to own the pressure of it all.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of pastors who fail, they minimize like being a lead pastor, being a pastor, but specifically being a lead pastor is an overwhelming amount of
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah.
We're like,
I am
why
being
would I do this?
I am being pulled on in every direction of my life, and I feel both godly pressure to build the kingdom, and I feel ungodly pressure that I want my life to look a certain way so I feel
Yes.
better about it. I feel the expectation.
feel
of
like I'm losing?
I mean, you want to talk about
man.
you're talking about the pressure that I've had to choose multiple times between seeing somebody last time before they die
Yeah.
or missing an important moment with one of my kids.
Yes, Yeah. absolutely.
And you want to know what? When I've chosen my kids, I wake up in the morning and go, did I make the right
Yeah.
decision?
It's so hard.
And that's pressure. And I
really
mean,
true.
we could just go on and on and
Yeah.
on. So the pressure is real, which means
So deal with your crap.
if you're not intentional with it, guess what? That pressure is going to blow up your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think most of these people, there's a few megalomaniacs in the mix. Most of them were great people. Really good
Absolutely.
people who loved God,
Yeah.
who started with pure
Absolutely.
desires, and the pressure built to the point where they didn't know what to do with it. And guess what? It's gonna explode somewhere. And I think that's what happens to so many pastors. Or you get to the point where we could look at the celebrity pastors or the big name pastors, but that I've had this feeling as a non-celebrity pastor, where you have the feeling
Pretty big
sometimes.
time,
I'm
Phil.
a pretty big
Hey,
deal.
Phil,
I
first
don't
of
know
all,
if you know who
you're
I
on
am.
the pastor's podcast.
I'm on the
I
pastor's
mean,
podcast.
gosh.
So let's
We've arrived.
let's
I
not
can
talk.
buy
Let's not
as
talk.
many Uncrustables as I want.
Let's
Yeah, you
not talk.
can.
Let's not talk down your status
But I've
when
had
you're on the
this
pastor's
feeling.
podcast.
We talk about spiritual abuse and things like that, which is a totally different, which
That's
is
another-
real.
that's
but it's
another
but
podcast,
often
Phil.
they're pastors are the most spiritually abused people I've ever met. I get used, mistreated, gaslighted, like all the things that people say. I'm just saying it happens I'm not minimizing it. Real spiritual abuse is horrible. I'm just saying the normal little things. You want to know who deals with those things more than anyone else? Pastors do.
Oh my gosh.
And I
Never
just
thought of
think
that.
there's this reality that I've had times in my life like I don't get paid enough to be treated like this.
Surely.
Because by the way, most pastors are not getting paid
No.
as well.
That's right.
70% of pastors are
It's Joel
bivocational.
Osteen that gets blown up. But I want to go, do you know what the average salary is
Yeah.
for a pastor out there? They're not wealthy.
When I hear people, I'm like, yeah, we could look at the one person, but you want to know what most pastors,
average, that's right.
their kids are on Medicaid or Medicare or they're struggling,
by, yeah.
and there are times where somebody says something so stupid to you, and they're demeaning,
Yeah.
or they have these crazy expectations that no human being could fulfill, and there's that thought in the back of your mind, I'm struggling so much for this fruit,
Yeah.
and I think that's where the enemy, that feeling when you're like, this is really hard. The fruit feels really barren. And the enemy can come in and be like, yeah, it's not worth it.
Yep.
And I think that's the part where pastors have to be so careful and realize it is worth it because we are serving unto the Lord. And the fruit is often on the other sides of those barren seasons. But man, if we don't know what to do with that pressure, people spiral
And
from it.
I would say the other side of it too is when things are going really well and it feels like everything you touch is success and church is growing, oh my gosh, miracles are happening, and all of a sudden you can start to not have to pay attention to fight so hard.
Yeah.
So like what you're talking about, when you're in that spot, like right now I feel like we're a group that feels pretty sober to it.
Yeah.
So we are aware of the fight. We're aware of what we are fighting for, and we're willing to do the work. But when things are going good,
Great point.
I feel like you
That's a
see
great
so
point.
many people of like, hey, the favor's moving, things
Yeah.
are going, all of a sudden your
Absolutely.
guards are going down.
That's true.
You're not inviting people in because you don't need the help.
It's true.
All of a sudden you become a little bit more untouchable. Things
I'm
are
God's
getting
gift.
into your life.
You're welcome, world.
Oh.
Yes.
Phil's here.
Yeah, I was just sitting there thinking, right now we're sober to it. And
Yeah.
things happen when you get in the low, but when you're in that I'm flying high, things are going easy. I
Yeah.
feel like
Right.
you just get caught up in the forgetting
Yep.
the reality of Jesus and what you need of Jesus because it's almost too easy.
It also makes me think, as you're talking, the highs are high and the lows are low.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
So
I mean,
true.
as an
So
Enneagram
opposite.
3, preaching when it goes well and people love you is like intoxicating.
Yeah, it
like
is.
it's like man, we just had a massive success. So even like the highs
Yeah.
are really, they're just a high. Yeah, churches, that's the biggest number we've had on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sermon was amazing. We just pulled that thing off. And man, it just touches something that's like, whoa, that's incredible. This is exciting.
This
and then,
is
but it's
why-
like the opposite
That's
when you're
so
like,
funny.
that's the lowest Sunday we've ever had. Like, what? Like, you know what I mean? And
I just think you got to have real people in your life. Like I had Sunday, like I can remember it like it was yesterday, maybe 5 years ago. Coco's going to kill me if she sees me. This actually happened.
listen,
I came
your wife's
home,
not listening to this.
Yeah,
Trust me. She's
that's
like-
true. Let's just
She's
face
heard
it.
everything you've said.
I came home. We had like great ministry time. People got saved. I was feeling it.
Yes.
What I was feeling is me.
Yes.
I walked through the door. I had this like waiting
Yes.
for her to come.
Yes.
And she looked at me. She says, "You mean God did that?" As she handed me the trash bag to take
Yeah,
the trash
tell her,
out.
tell her.
And I'm like, but I needed that little
Yeah.
bubble bursting moment
Yeah.
to remind me, hey, bro, like this ain't you.
I was
This
just
is
going to
Lord,
say,
stay in
this
your
is why
spot.
Banning's Enneagram 3 has a wife with a strong wing 8 that
That's right.
speaks it.
Yeah, dear Lord. What's the advice we give pastors?
Man.
It's not just, at the end of the day, I want to say, hey, pastors, still be in ministry because it's really good.
Right.
Like, it's really good. We need pastors in ministry. And,
We do.
And honestly,
And
I
we do. We
wouldn't,
need
I wouldn't
more
want to do
pastors.
anything else.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to.
I wouldn't want to do anything else.
And I mean, that's how
Yeah, that's
you
how
know
crazy
the
it is.
call.
Oh, it's the greatest thing I've ever done. I often think
It's the
we spent,
it's the greatest honor.
I don't know how many years doing more traveling
Mm-hmm.
ministry. And for me, it felt empty, if I'm honest. It was like,
Not for me, man.
I
I'm
know.
flying high.
but and now that we have the church and we're really walking in people's lives, it's literally the greatest honor. It's like
It's a
am
privilege.
so
Oh, 100.
moved by the people that are a part of our church and that are running with us and that they share their life with me, and like it gives me purpose for being here. But at the same time, it's so hard.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean,
So that's our
Yeah.
hey, still be in ministry, everybody. Okay,
Yeah.
when you're listening to the podcast, real quick, you got just a minute to share some like, hey, this is kind of what I would tell people.
Man, I'd say everybody has brokenness.
Yeah.
The enemy traffics in our brokenness, in our broken areas that are unresolved, unrenewed, unhealed. And so for me, I would say every pastor, please, at some point in time, do that work. Get a therapist to do some introspection in your life so that you can deal with things. We all have them. They get lodged in us in ministry. We get traumatized in ministry. The things we see, just like you just said, going into those rooms where people are dying.
Yeah.
Like I did that 6 times this fall. 6 times I went into cancer, those rooms, people in hospice. I did 6 memorials back to back to back, all of them within a month and a half's time. So I needed a therapist. And I needed, one of my friends said to me, you need to sit down and take a week. And that's what I did. But having a friend and having a therapist already in my world and already being okay with that created. So you have to walk into that, I think.
I agree. And I would say, I mean, I went to a memorial several months ago of somebody in our church, and I cried. And the feeling I had, I'm so thankful I feel something. Because this person mattered to me. But I had been at enough funerals of people who mattered to me that I felt nothing.
wow.
Because you just go numb to it as a
Yeah.
pastor. And I think that there's that place where,
That's scary.
I just to echo what you're saying, Keith, and what the whole conversation has been, we have to find real friends and
Yes.
start with senior pastors. If you don't know who else to start
Yes.
with,
That's right.
start with somebody who's in your shoes somewhere else,
Yeah.
can understand. We have to fight for full intimacy and honesty with your spouse. Get there. I think we have to just choose to have fathers and mothers. We've got to really deal with the false desires of, I want to be great. And I think there's good parts of that. There's God-centered parts of that,
Yeah.
but there's very Phil-centered parts
Spiritual
of
and
that.
fleshly. They're in
Yeah.
there.
So I
there.
just have to keep owning that's in me. I want my
Yeah.
church to grow
Yep.
because I genuinely want to see people saved, and I genuinely want people to think I'm great. And I have
both
to
exist.
I have to own
Yeah.
one exists with the other and not act like it. And so I got to keep
That's so
bringing
good,
those things
Phil.
in front of the Lord
So good.
and friends. And I think if we just start doing those things, it will build towards health.
Yeah.
This is a whole nother conversation we're not going to get into, but I think the idea of actually submission is big too.
Yeah.
There needs to be people that you're actually submitting your life
Absolutely.
to.
Right.
Elders and one another that I'm actually submitting. So in other
Yeah.
words, when you come, this isn't just like, I'll figure out what I want to do with what you're saying, but there's
Yes.
actual
Yes.
submission in your life. CJ, last thoughts as we wrap it up?
Well, I just think anybody that's struggling should come call me. I'll set you straight. No, I'm
Yes,
just kidding.
it's true. Facts.
I'm
You have
Yeah.
enough. You have enough work with me.
no, stop it. I think, obviously community is
it's
a
everything.
life-changing thing. But my message, if you know anything about my life is messy. We all have our hard stuff. We all have our struggle, and just don't stop. Deal with, I had a whole message I wanted to call Deal With Your Crap.
Yeah.
But banning made me
true.
change it to a better refuse to settle is what we called it. But because I think we all have it, and to pretend like
It's so
it's
true.
not there,
It's the
and
truth.
but that the shame that keeps us from it is just as big.
Yeah.
And so what helps me is to remember I am not the only one
Yeah.
that walks through this. I remember just really quick, when I walked through anxiety for a lot of years, it was really intense. And what was hardest for me in church was I only heard victories. And that
Yep.
sounds bad to say, but I never
exactly
heard
where
of
you're
the
going.
journey in
That's
the
right.
middle.
Yeah.
Like I would hear these amazing stories of breakthrough, but what if that breakthrough, I was doing everything I could. Anybody could pray for me.
Oh, it's so
Anybody
good.
could do something. And I just wanted to hear, what do I do when that doesn't happen? Who do I go to?
Yeah.
How do I
I
walk
love
this
that.
out? And am I the failure? And so to even be honest as you are leading people that it's okay that it's a journey.
Yeah.
And yeah, we believe God can do it in an instant. But man, if it's not there, don't sit down. We
Yeah.
keep doing
So
what we
good.
can do, what's in front of us.
It's funny, to your point, real quick. I said over the pulpit that I was taking antidepressants, and I do because of the weather. I have real bad seasonal depression. And I said that, and I got 100 emails on Monday morning in my box.
Wow.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. I didn't know. Thank you for saying that. Never heard a spiritual leader give me that. So this idea that we're Superman, I think it's important for people to know their spiritual leaders struggle.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's important for them to know Pastor isn't always encouraged. Pastor doesn't always
Yeah.
have faith. Pastor has doubts. Pastor gets disappointed, disillusioned. Pastor loses vision. They need to know that we have those moments.
Or this is how I
but-
fight for my family. This
Yeah.
is how I contend for the things that are in front of me, even when they're not there.
Yes.
Do you talk that out with anybody? Because I'm intrigued because sometimes with some of these young guys, I'm like, all right, they're not your confessor. Like,
Right.
You
Right.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
this is it. Or they're just constantly being known by their struggle.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
Yeah, you got to.
these external processors. So it's an interesting thing. I agree completely with you. But I'm also like, I would just say walk with people too as you're
Well,
processing. Like,
absolutely.
hey, how much am I?
Absolutely.
Well, you see people processing all of these intimate things in social media and different
Yes.
places.
Yes.
Like for me, it's like I have, like I told you, I have a group, so I can
Yes.
say, hey, man, I'm feeling this
Yes.
way, and I can
But
vet. I
and
can,
what a good thing that our people actually know. Like, my sufficiency is in the Lord.
It's in the Lord.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, I think,
Right.
like, I hope my maturity matches the maturity of what a pastor should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my anchor, my hope,
Yes.
my peace,
Say it.
it's in Him.
Say
Like,
it.
I'm not enough. And I think sometimes coming to the point where as pastors, we can actually believe that's okay. I think that's the thing.
Absolutely.
That I somehow, Christ being enough doesn't feel good enough. Because all around me, and I can open up my Instagram,
Yes.
is all the feelings of people that are
yes.
enough.
Yeah.
And I want to be enough.
Yes.
And it's actually that I have to fight for my own soul to go, no, I believe the gospel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is Jesus is my sufficiency.
Yep.
So to act as if I am a sufficiency unto myself
Yes.
is a lie. And just learning kind of to normalize that, I think, is hard.
It is.
But
So
we've
listen,
had to.
guys, as great as this conversation's been, as rich as it's been, my concern is that the only thing people are going to remember is Go-Gurts.
I think it's fair.
Well, I think
This
it's
is-
profound.
This is how
Go-Gurts
it's
and
going to be
Uncrustables.
from Primero, I'm like, what was the podcast? I don't know. They talked about some stuff, but let me tell you about this Go-Gurt story because it was the beginning.
If you're having a hard time, get some Uncrustables, some Go-Gurts,
Oh
sit
my
on the
God.
couch.
Do you know
it'll
how
be
much
fine.
right now I could go home and have Go-Gurts and Uncrustables and be totally good with my life?
Absolutely.
Or
well, I
Eggos?
don't think I'd feel good afterwards.
No, I
Let
wouldn't
go of
go
my
there.
Egos. Stop.
Oh,
Blueberry
Eggos would be the
Eggos,
same
bro.
thing. So,
I want
all right, guys. Well, listen. Thanks for joining us, guys. Thanks for the conversation. Listen, everybody, come hang out with us. Pastors Conference in Sacramento every January.
Come
It
on.
is a really
So
incredible
good.
3
So good.
days, and then we do a 2-day Pastors Conference in May in London. For those of you in the UK and then want to fly in from Europe as well. So listen, either come in January, This is for pastors, church leaders, and their teams. We'd love to have you guys be a part of it. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, man.